Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Transformation podcasts. Today we will be talking about AI, security and disrupting the security experience, but for the better. I am delighted to welcome Peter Evans, CEO and board member at Extract One Technologies. Peter, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Susie, and I really appreciate you inviting me to be on today.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Peter, I know you have a passion for leading high-growth technology businesses and over 25 years of experience leading organisations' digital transformation and innovation. And Extract One is no exception to this, of course. And I know you've also worked in large technology companies such as IBM, where you were also using technology to disrupt and innovate in the area of security systems, cloud, mobility, etc. But
yes,
let's come back to Extract One, which is a leading AI-powered security technology company, bringing the physical security industry into the digital world. And the vision is creating a world where great experiences and safety work together. And I wanted to start there, Peter, because it would be great if you could tell us more about this vision and what Extract One does to achieve great experiences and safety working together.
Well, thank you, Susie. It's a great question and a great place to start. I think any one of us would agree, and particularly most of your listeners, that security, whether it's physical security or cybersecurity, and the guest experience are, they butt heads with each other.
Yeah.
The more we want a more secure environment, the more we add more locks, badge access control systems. I go to my online banking this weekend, and it's no longer two-factor authentication; it's five-factor authentication.
Sounds painful.
Sending me a text that I have to enter the code into, and if you don't do it fast enough. And the convenience factor declines as the need for more and more security goes up.
Yeah, of course.
And I would argue, particularly in the physical security world, we're using technologies that are very labor-based, or that are approaches that are very labor-based, or technologies that are 40 or 50 years old. You think about when you walk into a venue and you're screened for weapons, we use a walk-through metal detector. The walk-through metal detector was actually invented in 1881 by Alexander Graham Bell.
No way.
And it was originally 1881. It was originally intended to, like when it was used in broad society, for penitentiaries to make sure that the prisoners did not have a paperclip to open the handcuffs. So we're trying to solve a modern day problem, the proliferation of weapons and the unfortunate mass shootings, with a technology that's very, very old. And I'd give you it as an example to put it in context. When metal detectors became prominent 30, 40 years ago, it was about the same time that fax machines were becoming prominent. Now imagine, Susie, if you and I were doing this podcast with a fax machine. It's laughable. And so as there's more and more need for weapons detection, as there's more and more proliferation, as, for example, in the UK, where they're invoking Martin's Law, which will require every venue to be screened, we need a modern day approach. And in the same way that we've done digital transformation for the way we do online banking versus going to brick and mortar buildings, the same way we do online retail versus brick and mortar. During COVID, my daughter got educated remotely for 2 years. We've transformed every other part of our society. Why not physical security? And that's essentially what we're doing by creating this transparent, frictionless, just walk right in experience for people, but alerting on weapons when they happen to walk through the door. Okay? And so there's a lot more we'll talk about here, but that's the essence of what we do. Is none of this invasive taking out watches and wallets and cell phones and going into a building, and it's slow, and it's an invasion of your personal privacy and people looking at your bags. Just walk right in. And the system won't alert all those items, but it will alert if you have a gun, a knife, or bomb-making parts. And so there's all kinds of benefits to the venues that we work with.
But it's ironic, though, isn't it? And you've just made that comparison. It's sitting with me. Sorry, it's just sinking in that we're, given the exponential speed of technology, Peter, we're still using technology from hundreds of years ago to actually get people into a building or onto a plane. I travel a lot, so I'm thinking about having to take everything out, like you said, although they're now piloting, putting it all back in. But, when you say disruption, I think of fast-moving technology and the impact it can have on people. So I can only imagine the impact of the better patron experience on people, on both employees and also the customers. So I know one of your values is people first.
Yes.
So how do you handle this human-centric dimension of this transformation? Because the technology is evolving, but we're not necessarily using it in the physical security space, are we?
Yeah. So there's a couple of thoughts there. How do we kind of think about people first? Well, at the end of the day, for me, the ultimate people first technology solution is one you're not aware of, one that's transparent. Imagine walking into your
Interesting.
favorite arena, and like I had an experience once with we were at an NBA stadium, and I like to go out with our customers very much, National Basketball Association. And there we were, and I was standing at the super VIP entrance, and a very famous singer who shall remain nameless, but she was dating a basketball player.
Double
and
security.
and she walked through our stuff, and she was starting to take off all of her jewelry, because that was her habit. That was she's used to going to taking off her purse, and she'd walked through the system, was looking for security, and she said, like, "Is that it?" I said, "That's it." And she said, "Swanky." Right. And so, to me, the best people first approach for technology is one that doesn't cause people to change their behaviors in unnatural ways, disrupting the flow of their business day. Think about children going to school. Unfortunately, in the United States, we have a real issue with shootings in schools. And there's all sorts of, discussions and debates about how to solve that. I'm not here to debate the different approaches. I'm here to provide a technology solution that's transparent. Today, the children just walk right in. They've got their backpacks, their laptops, their chargers, their metal water bottles. That they're going to get educated. And a people first approach is the purpose of that child going to school is education and an embracing, welcoming environment. Well, if I put in a metal detector, now their bags are getting inspected. I have a teenage daughter. She doesn't want anyone going through her bag.
No, clearly.
Right? Nobody wants to take out all their personal items,
No.
put them in a bin. It feels like you're going to a penitentiary. Now, with a situation like ours, the kids are just walking in, just like they were before, not recognizing they're being screened. And yet the security guards have been catching guns, catching knives that the children are carrying. So to me, that's your people first approach, that you don't change the way you live.
Yeah. So
Make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, absolutely. And I'm just thinking of all the travel I do. How come in airports globally we're so backward then? If I take that definition of a passenger experience or a security experience for the passenger, how come technology hasn't moved on? I mean, I have no understanding of how simple it is to put in place or not. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, so as a smaller business, when I first joined the company about 3 or 4 years ago, and we were looking like, how do we grow? It's there's an old joke about a bank robber in the Old West in the U.S. and a guy named Willie Coogan, and somebody said, "Willie Coogan, like, why do you rob banks?" And he said, "Well, that's where the money is." Right?
Fair enough.
and the point is, if you look at arenas and stadiums that have people already used to being screened, already using metal detectors, already have security staff and budgets, or look at, and the decision process is very quick.
Yes.
Versus, say, an airport, where there's a lot of security organizations. You've got the Transportation Safety Administration, the FAA. You've got state and local governments, state and local law enforcement. It's a 8 or 10 year process to go through all the certifications and the decision cycles. So while we would love to do things to improve the patron experience and the passenger experience in airports, 8 or 10 years is a long sales cycle.
Yeah.
So we're gonna build our business on those people who want to make 90-day decisions.
Okay.
And then as this becomes more and more deployed out in the world and more venues, and it's a habit for people, we think places like the TSA will start to catch up and the airports will start to catch up.
I mean, technologically, how easy is it to change? If I take out the governance, the decision making, the bureaucracy around, airports and those type of decisions, from a technological standpoint, how easy is it to put that in place? Something that is in line with the way I walk through my front door. Let's put it that way.
Susie, it's actually a very, very good question. Coming back to your people-centric question, We designed this, and we spent a lot of time out with customers to say, well, how do you operate daily,
Yeah.
and how can I make this something that's familiar but easier? It's the same way people looked at point of sale terminals,
Yeah.
and they spent a lot of time examining what is the flow of people through a grocery store, for example, or a retail store, and trying to make the technology fit into the business flow, as opposed to people having to rethink the business flow around the shortcomings of the system. And that was one of the lessons learned early in my career is if you try and put the square peg into the round hole, you'll have resistance.
Yeah, of course.
You try and make it something that's easy to adopt, easy to deploy, easy to maintain. In fact, no maintenance if you can, and just it sort of fits in the way the business model is already working. That's fantastic. We have one customer, a very large auto manufacturer in an automotive plant. They make $1 million of cars every minute.
Every
So
minute.
they every minute. So they have their operations like down to a T, and they measure every second of everything possible. And so when we deployed our solutions there, we had to make sure that we were doing nothing to disrupt this multi-billion dollar business operation, have them reinvent it. And fortunately, the good news is that we were actually able to accelerate the ingress of all their workers so that they were getting more productivity. And they've now insisted all their supply chains start using the technology so they can catch up on making the transmissions on the cars and things.
Wow.
So, so to your point, make it seamless, make it transparent, make it invisible.
And so I was going to ask you how to go about creating this exceptional experience, but I think I've already got some of the answer in terms of the time you spend with your customers, understanding how they work today so that that isn't disrupted, and then moving into something that is more efficient. Would that be a fair say?
Absolutely. And I think, Susie, a lot of people say, like, what's the path to success with these digital transformations, right? You have to be kind of a customer back, not product forward approach. Too often, great engineers, and this is one of the challenges with AI today. Too often, engineers come up with a great idea, but it's not pragmatic in the real world. It's not deployable. It doesn't fit into operations. Our first product, it wasn't drawing that much power, and we had to connect to the Ethernet. And so someone said, "Well, we'll just use power over Ethernet (PoE) to power the system." Well, great. How many football stadiums have got Ethernet jacks all over them? None. Right? And so while it was a great idea from an engineering point of view, it was not reflective of how customers want to run their business. So you have to be very much a customer back approach to innovation. It's why AI, I believe, is suffering. A lot of AI, let's change now, but a lot of AI solutions, you had great engineers come up with these fantastic AI engines, and then they went and looked for a problem to solve.
Yes, as opposed to the other way around.
As opposed to the other way around. And so you didn't have the right data sets to underpin the engines. You didn't have the right presentation layer of information to make it usable to the customer. So you almost need to say, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? And then work back, right?
Would you say that that's your biggest learning to date about driving innovation and digital transformation in the security sector? Is it about really understanding the problem that you're trying to solve? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you looked at all the startups in Silicon Valley, California, 95% of them fail. And I would argue that 95% of them fail because they fail to understand the customer first. And they create this great little tool, software, AI engine, whatever, and then they go out looking for sales. And they end up creating 5 different unique products at almost custom development for 5 different applications in the desperation to find revenues. And you end up being like a lot of overhead costs for supporting multiple applications that have very little traction. It's better to be hyper-focused on doing one thing very well. I'd rather own 60% of a $500 million market than have 10 little one-off applications in 10 different markets.
Absolutely.
And be the dominant player and then move into the adjacencies where there's referenceability to get you.
I mean, I'm also understanding, Peter, from what you're saying, that these 5 applications or these 10 applications still don't know what the customer needs or wants. Is that correct?
Sure. Okay. And it's like, we need some revenues to fund the business. Oh, here's a guy who'll pay us for this. And you go off and you do that custom thing just for him.
Okay.
Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that if you do your research to say, well, wait a minute, there's 700 other customers who want the exact same thing, but maybe we should pivot and go do that one thing well. So,
And
yeah.
what would your advice be to large organizations looking to create sustainable digital transformation in terms of security? Because we know that particularly in the hybrid model, since COVID, there's the cybersecurity, there is also physical security. How do people
Yeah.
get on site? What happens with business intelligence? What will your badge let you into? What won't it let you into? How do you get into that building? Are you allowed into this building? So if I look at the complexity of that, if I have 100, sites worldwide and I have one badge for one person, but physically I need to get onto each site. What happens there? What would your advice be to start thinking about it?
Well, I think there's sort of two or three thoughts there, Susie. The first one is um, you need you need to jump in and start.
Yeah.
If I'm a business, at some point you have to make the decision and say, we're going to start. And just like the tech companies where you want to get out in front of as many customers as you can and learn from those customers, as a business that's adopting digital technologies to transform their business, you have to start.
Yeah.
You can analyze all you want, but until you actually start and get the feedback and go, oh wow, we didn't think about the fact that these badges are sitting beside people's cell phones and they're
Yes, for
wiping them out
example.
accidentally,
Yeah.
right? And so there's so much to learn by actually like don't just dip your toe in the water, but go in up to your knees, right? And and learn from that. And then I think digital transformation is a journey. There isn't like an endpoint. Oh, we're going to do using facial recognition for automation of the credentialing approach, so people no longer need badges, right? That's an
Yeah.
interesting idea. But people kind of think of it as I've done the project, I'm done. I am, air quotes, digitally transformed.
I like the
It's
idea.
yeah, it's a journey. It's a
Yeah.
continuous journey. I think of one of our customers, Madison Square Garden in downtown New York. They're constantly in competition for the entertainment dollar of the consumer. In New York, there's lots of options. I can go see a Major League Baseball game. I can go to
Yeah.
Madison Square Garden for a concert. I can go see Broadway theater. I can go out for an amazing dinner. I can take a tour. There's this constant competition, and they have a mindset of continuously using technology to continuously innovate the guest experience so that they can stay ahead. As soon as you start buying your ticket online, there's information to be gathered about you. How can I use that to provide you a better experience when you've gone to the venue? Oh, you've been here twice. You've been here 10 times. You've always bought tickets at 100 level. We're going to send you a text and invite you to come up to the VIP entrance today, right? There's things that you can do leveraging digital. And the nice thing about digital is it's infinitely scalable, right?
Yes.
Unlike
Yes.
labor-based business models that are
Yes.
finite, it's infinitely scalable, and you can gather so many more insights to create this amazing guest experience. You know?
And what's your vision then? When I hear you talk about the guest experience, it sounds so easy, and it doesn't sound like any guest experience I've been through
Yeah.
myself. But what's your vision for this guest experience in 5 years from now? Because technology makes it seamless, it's scalable,
Yes.
so it doesn't matter how many different sites or how many different events, you can use the technology at each one. So what would your vision be, Peter, for 5 years from now, the guest
Yeah.
experience powered by this technology?
Well, I'll use an arena as an example,
Yeah.
but our customers include people who are like major automotive manufacturers, distribution centers, schools, hospitals, anywhere where people are worried about having a safe environment or a safe environment. Okay. And again, you look at places like healthcare, 76% of all workplace violence activities actually occur in healthcare. And so,
Wow.
these are
Okay.
markets that are places for us. But let me use the arena as an example. You decide that you're going to go see Adele in concert at Radio City Music Hall. Well, today you get to Radio City Music Hall and you have to stand in line to walk through the metal detector for weapons. If you have a bag, you have to go to a separate line, so it goes through an X-ray machine or gets physically examined. So you're in a second line. Then you go to a third line, and you have to stand there for your ticket to be scanned.
Yeah.
And then you go to a fourth line to go get, you know, food at the concessions, and then you stand in a fifth line for the restroom.
Sounds familiar.
And, and you know, these organizations are tracking this data and finding
Mm,
out the majority of the time that somebody's actually at the venue, they're standing in line.
mm,
You know, you over
mm,
50, 60% of your time in a venue is in line, not in the experience,
mm.
right? These are no longer arenas, they're experiences. And it's the same thing when you think of places like Disney or
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
locations. So imagine, Susie, if, you know, as soon as you're buying a ticket, I can figure out from a security point of view as well as a guest experience, this is Susie. She's not using a fake ID. She's been to the venue before. She's got a valid credit card. We seem to see that she likes shows of this kind of a demographic. I'm already gathering, you know, information about you so I can ensure a safe and secure journey, but a great experience along that journey. And so our vision is that as you're approaching the arena, we know that this is Susie. She's not a known felon or a gang member because you look like that, Susie. Okay. Um, you have a valid ticket. You've been here many times before. You tend to like these kinds of concerts. You don't have a weapon on you, and you haven't broken stride from the sidewalk to your seat.
Mm,
You've just walked right in, just like you walked into your favorite Starbucks.
mm.
And then we're providing insights and information to you so that you know, hey, the lines are shorter on the east side of the building. Hey, you know, the show's about to start in 5 minutes. And we reduce that negative experience and the time in line to a very enhanced experience. So while we started as a company with this idea of weapons detection, we've built a platform where we can start to think about the end-to-end guest journey. And the same applies to students going to schools. You know, you go to your healthcare provider in your hospital. How do we navigate your journey in a more effective manner, in a safer manner also?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anything that's also linked to administration, where you have to go personally to
Yeah,
get your passport or to renew your driving license or anything, it
yeah,
just reminds me of queues.
exactly, exactly. Now, you know, take it from another application. You know, we're working with some very, very large retailers, and they tell
Yes.
us, well,
Yeah.
they're very worried about weapons on the way in. They're also worried about theft on the way out.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
the nature of the digital technology is, as you walk in, I can say this person has a gun or a knife, or this person is a known felon, or this person has been caught for shoplifting before. And on the way out, the same systems can alert on earbuds, cell phones, smartwatches, and things. So you get this broader integrated solution.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because all the data we're talking about and the sort of information into the system is quite personal. And I know
Yes,
that Extract One is described as a company with purpose, but that carries out innovation with integrity. So I
yes.
love that tagline. I love those two ideas, and I find that combination very powerful, Peter. Can you tell us more about this and how that plays out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ideas there. First off, unfortunately, the physical security market is a little bit characterized by, how do I say it, aggressive marketing.
Yes.
You know, there's always this, you know, when you're competing on something that historically has been a labor-based business model, and you're competing on things like, you know, the metal bike racks and
Yeah.
stanchions
Yeah.
and walk-through metal detectors, there's not a lot of value. Those sort of physical items don't have there's not a value differentiation. It's like trying to sell one hammer versus another, or
Yeah.
one security guard versus another. And so, unfortunately, there's a lot of aggressive marketing. We've decided that we wanted to go in a different approach because this is about security. You know, if your badge access control system doesn't work and somebody's locked out of the office for a few minutes, it's very inconvenient, but it doesn't introduce risk.
No.
If you're selling a weapons detection solution and the system doesn't work, that's a whole different
Ball
problem,
game. Yeah, of course.
right? So we've taken the approach of saying, look, we're going to be very, very transparent with our customer. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. Here's some recommended approaches around people, processes, and technologies to create an outcome that addresses your business needs in the best way possible. And then we've taken on the activity to ensure that our technologies have been tested by third parties. So in the UK, the NPSA did rigorous hands-on testing with us. In North America, organizations like the TSA, FAA, you know, the Department of Justice and US Federal Marshals. So we have those third parties that can verify this is what we do. this is what we don't do. And then putting a lot of time into the customer instead of just saying, hey, here's our solution. Thank you very much. Appreciate your purchase order. We spend a lot of time with the customers architecting the best flow for their business outcomes. And so, that's the whole idea is like, let's do this with high integrity. We all have children going to school. Let's make sure they're safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I turn that inwards, because that's the guest experience, within Extract One Technologies, what does that mean for the employee experience, Peter? And how do you sort of onboard people to provide that externally?
That's a great question. We're really working hard on building a culture that's all around sort of trust with our customers and customer first. And I often use this analogy of, we're like the concierge at the hotel.
Yeah.
No matter what your need, the concierge at the Four Seasons Hotel takes care of it. All of a sudden you need tickets for a show. All of a sudden you need to change your flights. All of a sudden, whatever. The concierge is always there. They always have your back. We're trying to build that culture within our organization. And the best way to do it with onboarding people, get them out in front of customers. Let them understand the real world problems when a customer says, this invoice is like not going to work, or this deployment is not going to work, or we need the training videos to be this way and not this way, because that's how the world consumes them today. It comes back to that customer back approach.
Yeah.
And all it takes is getting out with a customer 2-3 times to have that aha moment and say, okay, I get it. I get what our brand is about.
And how do you think Extract One Technologies employees would qualify the employee experience if they had to use one word?
Wow, that's a great question. Just one word? I can only use one?
Two at the most.
As you've come to realize, Susie, I'm long-winded. I'll talk your ears off.
No, either a tagline or one word, but something that translates the essence of this culture that you're building.
That's a great question. You're gonna have to give me a second to think about that
of
one.
Course.
I will say this: we do employee surveys probably every month.
Every month? Because, okay.
Yeah, we want to keep probably every couple of months. We want to keep the pulse on the employees and what they're thinking about, what they're worried about, and sometimes it's related to our customers, sometimes it's related to the business, sometimes it's related to growth. I think of the one word at the end of the day, it's passion. And I know that's personal for me, so maybe I'm reflecting myself a little bit more, but this is a really fun company. I really love what I do. I really hope all the employees love what they do too. We're making a difference in the world, and we're doing it with really cool innovation, right? And, leapfrog innovation where technology is there to like remove roadblocks, solve problems, enhance that guest experience, not be in juxtaposition with the guest experience. And I really think we're doing that in very interesting ways. And I hope that in 10 years from now, the employees are all looking back on this and going, man, that was such a fun ride,
Yeah. And of course, if they're seeing it at the top, then of course the influence will be there for the passion to trickle down. What do you think is the most challenging thing you have come across, Peter, in trying to put in place this culture?
Wow, that's a great question too. Boy, these are really good ones.
I'm saving all my small questions for the end.
for a Monday, these are really good, Susie. The challenge has been very openly and very honestly. The company's been around for about 6 or 7 years. I've been with the company about 4 years or so. And the company got a little bit ahead of its headlights in the first 3 or 4 years. We were new, we were a startup, we raised some money to get going, and there was this great expectation by all the investors that the product was going to fly off the shelf. Who wouldn't want weapons detection immediately? And, to sort of satisfy those investors, I think the company got into the market too early with a product that, while technically very good, was not packaged well.
Yeah, okay.
And it created a little bit of a bad taste in a lot of the market's mouth and in some of our employees. And our employees were feeling, I think, a little bit despondent. And so, we had to step back, right, hunker down a little bit, say, look, what is it we want to be as a company and who are we as a company? Let's go listen to those customers instead of trying to push a product on them. So we suffered from our I think listening to our own press about how great we were with a product that it wasn't ready. It'd be
Mm,
like telling people, "Here's a car, but I've got no wheels on it."
yeah.
And so, we had to wait till we finished the car with all the wheels, with all the right parts,
Mm.
and all the customers suddenly go, "Ah, that's what I'm looking for." As I tell to my employees, I want them to see our product and they feel like it's Christmas morning. All
Mm.
year long, they've been hoping for that one special toy, that one special gift, and they open the wrapping, they go, "Wow!" Right? And that's what we're trying to do with the product. That when they see it and they go, "That's what I need."
Mm.
So it took us a while to turn that around, and after taking some hits for not really delivering what we promised.
Mm. But it's the shadow side of passion, isn't it? You're so excited that you put it out there without necessarily, well, we come back to the customer, don't we? Without
Yeah.
necessarily looking at what the market needs, what the customer needs, how to package it, etc., etc. But for me, that's also the hallmark of quick growth, is that there's excitement there, there's passion there, there's a need there, so therefore there's growth. And scaling it in a way that is sustainable is really difficult.
Yeah.
Which brings me to I mean, time is running and I'll hone my questions in a little bit, but which brings me to a question around, you've always worked in, technological high growth environments where you've scaled it successfully. What is the key factor to that success of scaling high growth sustainably?
That's a great question. I think that again, it comes down to something we talked about earlier, being hyper focused,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Doing one thing very, very well. There's a great book, it's very old now, it's probably 25 years old, by a gentleman named Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. And Jeffrey Moore spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. He sat on the board of a lot of tech startup companies. And he asked the question, why do some succeed? Why do some have hyper growth? And why do some fail?
Mm.
And he sort of brought it down to a handful of ideas and principles. And one of them was, be hyper focused on doing one thing and learn to say no to a lot of things.
Mm.
And it's very, very difficult when you're a startup to say no. You're
Yeah.
so wanting to have that hyper growth. You want to say yes to everything.
Mm.
But in many times, a lot of those things are, they're time sponges and they're resource sponges.
Mm.
And so you have to keep, you know, if you were a Roman gladiator on your chariot, you want all four horses running in the same direction because you'll get much faster than if
Mm.
you were riding on one horse and someone else was on another horse and they were all going in different directions.
Mm.
The
Mm.
four horses will ride much faster and pull that chariot much faster than if you were riding a single horse. And
Absolutely.
so it's that hyper focus and being willing to say no to many, many things. And then the second thing I'd say is you have to look for um, if, we're talking digital transformation. How do I leverage digital transformation for my own internal operations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We're successfully growing our OPEX single digits a year, while top line growth is growing 300% a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of the investment we put in a scalable business model, where as many things as we can are, automated throughout the
Mm.
business.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it? You also have to be bold enough to say no when it feels like you shouldn't because you're just starting up. I mean, giving
Yeah,
yourself permission to step back and say, no, I can't do that at the moment. And that's hard, isn't it?
it is. And, we have dozens and dozens of partners in different countries all around the
Mm.
world. And, we're certified in certain countries around the world and not in others. And you look at some of these markets and go, wow, that could be huge. But again, they could all be huge.
Yeah.
But to service them, you have to get in, you have to get the partners trained, you have to get the certifications, you got to set the tax entities and all these things. And you're kind
Mm.
of betting on, is that market going to actually occur or not?
Yeah.
Where, again, I look in our own backyard and the few markets that we have picked globally, there's more than enough business for us to grow tenfold
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just by executing well right where we
Mm.
already have incumbency, references, customers who are strong advocates. Leverage those things for hyper growth
Mm.
as opposed to trying to establish again and establish again.
Mm. Mm. So,
And I think that hyper growth, but I think that means hyper focus. Seems
mm.
counterintuitive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's it's quality over quantity, isn't it? It doesn't have to be huge to be hyper growth. It just needs to be hyper focused.
Yes, agreed. And, it seems counterintuitive, and many things around like hyper growth, you have to almost resist your natural inclinations.
Yes.
Right? There's things that we all want to say yes to. A marketing strategy that may have worked previously in one stage of the maturity of the industry, but now you're moving to a different part. You're moving from the early adopters to the early majority part of the marketplace. Well, they want to be marketed to differently. There are certain things that are key values for them that may not have been for the early adopters. And so it's hard to say no to things, or hard to shed what worked in the past and move forward. I think you also have to be willing to disrupt yourself.
Yeah.
Here we are talking about digital disruption and digital disruption of industry, but what about disrupting yourself? There's a lot of companies who refuse to disrupt because so many people built their careers on the core product. Look at something like Sun Microsystems.
Yeah. Yeah.
That they failed to disrupt themselves and they were out innovated. Look at BlackBerry phones. Right? Everyone had a BlackBerry. It was the de facto standard, but they failed to innovate or build a platform that allowed it for innovation. And along came Apple.
Yeah.
Apple has continued to reinvent itself constantly with every new iteration of the product. And they've built incredible loyalty as a result.
Yeah, because they're looking at the customer experience day in, day out. And also, as you were speaking, Peter, I'm thinking of the generational effect on these type of experiences. Different generations coming in have very different habits because of digitalization and other things, but and socialization and the way society is moving, but they have different habits, they have different expectations, and they want different things, don't they?
Absolutely. So, that's a very good point. You have to think about the audience you're serving. We had that sort of aha moment when we were creating, training programs for all of our customers. And, God bless some of the folks who were building those training programs. They were building PowerPoints and they were imagining a classroom where they were going to talk. And all the people, the security staff who were running our systems, were all used to looking at 30-second TikTok videos. And so you have to,
case in point,
you have to cater to the audience. So in this case, if that's the audience, change your training materials to match them, so you could hold them up a 30-second TikTok video and go, do this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, especially the micro-learning thing of that digital has brought, which brings with it a loss of focus, but also hyper-focus if that's the way you learn. So it's very interesting.
Agreed. Well, I go back to my teenage daughter. I'm always amazed. She'll be sitting there studying, for her classes. And she's got her laptop in front of her. She's got her tablet beside her. She's got 2 smartphones, and she's bouncing around in 2 different classes with 2 different study groups between all those vehicles. And it's all little, 140 byte snippets of information. And so, the digital brain, the children who've been raised on digital, they work in correlation of data points. I often wonder, have they lost the art of critical thinking because they'll just go Google something?
Well, it's a massive question.
It's a different form of critical, I think, and it's all about correlation of data, almost like leveraging your brain as an AI engine, as opposed to just an engine that repeats things. So, it's an interesting point, though, about, we have to understand the market we're serving and how best to serve them in the manner they want to be served.
Yeah, and it's the revolution that's coming and that needs to come in education, isn't it? As you said, if I see somebody doing that, I'm like, oh, they're not learning then. A huge bias on my part of my definition of how people learn, So I think disrupting yourself is so important. And it brings me to, time is running, but it brings me to one of my last questions, Peter. Can you share with us what is the most transformative thing you've ever done?
Wow. There's an interesting question.
A small question.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking of have I ever turned water to wine? I don't think so. Right.
Sell your secret. If you have.
If I did. Well, I'm going to give you 2 answers to that, if you will, if you'll bear with me. One is my children. I mean, I always ask myself, did I raise them well? And the fact that they're teaching me new things every single day, to me, that in itself is a very transformative thing, because they're kind of giving back to me. Yeah. From a business point of view, I was involved in a project with a equipment manufacturer where essentially we were converting the old analog networks to digital. And the fact that, if I were to phone
Yeah.
you, Susie, my phone number appears on your phone, that was all through this digital transformation of the networks, which then became the platform for things like the internet, or things like smartphones, or things like us doing this podcast together today through this vehicle.
Yeah.
And so that was my first, experience right out of university. And I got thrown knee deep into the benefits of digital transformation without us even knowing about a thing called the smartphone
Yeah.
or the internet. The internet hadn't been invented at that time. And I'm not that old, but uh, but we were turning these old analog phones. I don't remember dial
I do.
phones.
I do remember doing
Yeah,
my phone number
and you
like
hear that
that.
click, 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 click,
Yeah.
click, and
Yeah.
right, and even the do 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 do, that was still an analog network, and we transformed it to an out-of-band digital network that created a whole new promise for the future. And that's kind of when the aha moment happened to me. And so that was probably the most transformative thing I've done. And for me personally, it transformed me to see how every single industry could be transformed digitally.
Yeah. So interesting, the wealth of opportunities that are out there that you don't see unless you get curious. So,
Yeah.
okay, Peter, would you have a final call to action for our listeners around crafting and disrupting existing experiences, whether that for customers or guests or whoever is your market?
hmm Well, two answers. The first would be, we talked a lot about this, is start with the customer. The most successful companies, in fact, if you look at the history of a lot of companies, IBM, Google, so many other customers, many of them started at a time of economic downturn. And so during that downturn, there was an opportunity. People were not, they were holding on to their dollars. They were not investing in innovation. So it allowed those organizations to go out and talk to the customer and say, well, when the market comes back and you do start spending, what are your priorities? What are your issues? What are your needs? And, so I always, again, believe about customer back. We've talked a lot about that today. On a company note, I'd be reticent if I didn't say, look, we're in the business of weapons detection, and the world is not going to change. Those issues are only going to get worse. And so if there are people who are listening today, give us a call, see if we can help you.
Okay, super, thank you. And Peter, thank you for coming and sharing your experience and your thoughts and your vision for the guest experience and security moving forward. Where can people find out more about you and what you do? They can give you a call, but where can they find you?
The best place to find us is on our website. It is
Okay.
www.extract1.com. That is spelled extract, Extractone, www.extract1.com. There's a contact me form in there, contact us form. You can fill it out. I've got a fantastic marketing organization. They watch all those inbounds every single day, and we're happy just to have a conversation with people, whether it's just about sharing ideas, whether it's other tech companies who are in the digital transformation business, and to share best practices, or for those who are concerned about weapons. We're happy to kind of be part of this industry and share our knowledge.
Okay, excellent. And I'll put that link in the show notes so that people can get to it quickly. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for a great conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Susie. Thank you again for the invitation. And look, I hope to see you sometime when I'm on the other side of the ocean, okay?
Yes, it's a small world, as we were saying before the show.
Exactly. Take care. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too.